my life. So today we're gonna be reacting to Warren Buffett's leaves the audience stunned with the best advice that he could give. And the reason why I like Warren Buffett so much is like I got my first advice from a gentleman that was teaching about Warren Buffett's strategy. So I'm not gonna hold y'all too much. I just had to update the thumbnail on the video. So let's get into it.
These people had one thing in common. They knew they had it in themselves. They knew they could be something beyond where they were. They were willing to put their time, their energies to better themselves. What you really could do with more skills, it's just remarkable. So I would like to just tell you a couple of short stories, and we'll draw maybe a couple of lessons from them. I would like to tell you of two women that each sold a business to Berkshire Hathaway, to me actually, for many, many, many millions of dollars. Both of them started with $2,500. By a coincidence, it was the exact same amount. It was everything they had in the world. And one of them was a woman who landed in Seattle in 1917, couldn't speak a word of English, had a tag around her neck. The tag said Fort Dodge, Iowa. The Red Cross got her to Fort Dodge, where she was reunited with her husband who had come to the country a couple of years earlier. And she lived in Fort Dodge for 2 years. And as she put it, she felt like a dummy. She couldn't pick up the language. She couldn't learn a word. And so she and her husband decided to move to Omaha. So they came to Omaha in 1919. And there she found a small colony of Russian Jews, so she started feeling more at home. And then as her oldest daughter went to school, she would come home, this daughter, Frances, and she would teach her mother the words she'd learned in school that day. And this woman, Rose Blumpkin, spent 20 years saving money, bringing first her siblings over, her mother and father, $50 at a time. She sold used clothing to do it. She had 4 children during this period. And by 1937, after 20 years, she'd saved $2,500. She went to Chicago and she bought what she could of furniture. Her dream had always been to open a furniture store. And this woman who had never gone to school one day in her life, with $2,500, but with the same spirit that the people in this room had about having a dream and working to accomplish that dream, she built a business which she sold to me in 1983 for $60 million approximately, and which did $1.5 billion worth of business last year. The 4th generation is working in that business. This woman, Rose Blumpkin, she worked for me until she was 103. And then she retired and she died the next year, which is a lesson to all of Berkshire's managers that premature retirement, you can't tell what's going to happen. But Mrs. B, with her $2,500, one further fact about her, she could not read or write. And she went into a furniture business, and she didn't bring anything unique in furniture, but she brought a determination to succeed. She knew she could outwork anyone else. She knew she cared about her customers. She worked at very low gross margins, but she built this incredible business. And I saw one other woman who did a similar thing with $2,500. I paid her hundreds of millions of dollars for her business.
What I said when I cut the mic off was basically I don't know if I'll ever retire, because retirement, like your job or your business, it gives you purpose. And like I'd probably be one of the richest Walmart greeters that we'd ever have, because retirement is just, it's not a lot of stuff you can do but sit home and watch TV, or like, you want to go out. I want to be somebody that, helps people in life. So that was what I just said.
So I decided to go to the source and get these people before, I don't want you guys coming around to me asking me hundreds of millions of dollars. I'd like to join in with you much earlier. So I've followed this group, and today I'd like to tell you about one other small business person. This person, I went to buy his business from him, and he turned me down, which was very wise. But this was a fellow who was born about 8 years before I was. He was born in 1922. We'll call him Jack, lived in the Midwest. He was a pretty good athlete, didn't like school much. And I'm going to tell you one thing early in the story. Maybe you can figure out who the guy was. The company he built hires more college graduates each year than any other company in the United States. And this fellow, who was destined for this but did not know it, Jack, went to college for a year and then dropped out. He really wasn't that interested in school. And the year he dropped out was 1941. And when the United States became under attack, he went down to the Army Air Force recruiting station, volunteered, and they turned him down because he had hay fever. So he went over to the Navy and again volunteered, and they took him.
Lockheed and Martin. Maybe. That might be the
company. They put him on an aircraft carrier. He flew small fighter airplanes during World War II, got 2 distinguished flying crosses from the Navy. And then he came back to the...
I'm making a face because I was in the military, and usually when you get disqualified, you're done. But it might have been different back in the day, because they put it in your records that you say he had hay fever. Yeah, and you definitely wouldn't. The flying, to learn how to fly in the military, you're like worth we spend like $2 million on our pilots. So I couldn't imagine that they would, like today, that wouldn't happen. But neither here nor there.
The Midwest. So now we've got a young guy. Probably by this time he would be 23 or 24 years old. And the interesting thing is, he got back to the Midwest, and he actually kind of went from one job to another for a short period of, or not such a short period of time. And he finally became a used car salesman at a Cadillac dealership in St. Louis, Missouri. And at age 35, having moved up in the organization, the sales organization, he said to his boss, "Could I go into car leasing business with you?" The boss said, "Well, if you'll cut your salary in half and you'll come up with, I think it was $25,000, which he borrowed, we can become partners in a car leasing company." So my friend Jack started at age 35 in the car leasing business.
Hurts.
And he had 7 cars. It was pretty slow. In fact, one of the things he did was whenever the phone rang, he let it ring 3 or 4 times so people would think that he was very busy answering other phones. And of course, it was the only call he was going to get all day. So his first venture was okay, but it wasn't really going to go anyplace. And there's a lesson in this for all of us. At age 40, he decided, with 17 vehicles, 17 cars, he was going to go into competition in the rent-a-car business. So now he's taking on Hertz and Avis and National and people like that who have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cars. And he's got 17 cars, and his cars aren't any different than theirs. I mean, he's buying them from General Motors or Ford or Chrysler. And he can't get the airport locations. Those companies have them all sold up. But he was determined that he would basically offer the customer, can't offer him a different car, but he can offer them friendlier service than they've ever seen. And so he started a company. He named it after the battleship that he'd flown from in the Pacific, which was the USS Enterprise. And
Enterprise.
He died about a year and a half ago. But when he died, his rent-a-car company, starting with those 17 cars, was worth more than Hertz and Avis and all the rest of the rental cars put together. The man's name was Jack Taylor, and his son, Andy Taylor, is a good friend of mine.
It only took me like 5 tries, but I got that right. Enterprise. Wow.
Runs the business now. A grandchild is in the business. They'll probably be a 4th generation along the line. So this man in the United States, he didn't invent artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything that, just like Mrs. B selling furniture, that any one of us could have entered those businesses. But he lived by the creed, basically, of delighting his customers and working with people and establishing the relationship with them so that they in turn would want to delight the customers. He couldn't go out there and take care of every rental car possibility, but he learned how to project himself and his attitude toward his fellow man and his desire, to make a friend out of every customer. He managed to take very ordinary cars and turn them into this extraordinary business from virtually nothing. And it illustrates several points. One is you don't necessarily get it right exactly right the first time. The car leasing business, basically you were competing on the cost of money to finance cars. And it's very hard to delight a customer when you just give them the car and tell them to send you a monthly check for 5 years and you'll be back at that time. So his talents were being wasted basically in that business. But at the age of 40, with all of that experience behind him, he found the golden key. He took a very ordinary business and turned it into an absolutely extraordinary operation.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. The crazy thing is I've never rented from Enterprise because all of their prices are usually more higher than Hertz. And but the point is that I thought was pretty interesting about this is like there's so many people that want to be like, oh, I'm in my 20s. Like I was that guy. I'm in my 20s. I need to be successful now. But the fact of the matter is most people don't become successful, especially men, until they're in their late 30s, early 40s. So I feel like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be that guy so early. This high value man making 6 figures when some things just take time. Like I have a friend that just graduated. I'm 32. I have a friend that just graduated and finished his residency. He just became a doctor. Like some things that's how life is. Some things just take time. And being a pediatrician, I would hope you would want him to have those years of experience before, he became a doctor. So interesting.
Just like Mrs. B or Rose Blumpkin did with furniture. And he didn't worry about whether the Federal Reserve was going to tighten or ease. He didn't worry about whether the stock market was up or down yesterday. He didn't worry about the things he couldn't change, but he did focus on the one thing he could change, and that was the customer's experience. And I have seen the one that got away, Enterprise. I went down to Florida and tried to talk him into selling to Berkshire, and he was smart enough not to do it. Probably the value of the company has quadrupled since I made that visit. But he was smart enough to see that he would find that business. Henry Ford, as you may know, failed twice before he started the Ford Motor Company in 1903. The test isn't whether you get the greatest business idea in the world the first time out. The test is whether you keep learning as you go along what your strengths are and what you can do for your customers, what you can bring especially to the party. And to do that, you need the education that I know you've received through 10,000 small businesses, but you need a genuine desire day in, day out to delight the customer. I've never seen a business, and I've seen a lot of businesses, but I've never seen one that delights the customer that doesn't succeed. I mean, what you want is that customer the next day when they think, do I want to rent a car or do I want to buy some furniture? What goes through their mind? You know, it's the place where they've had a great experience. I don't know what I paid for this tie. Actually, probably if somebody gave it to me, but for the purposes of the speech, I will say I have no idea. But or the shirt I'm wearing, or this. But I do know, I will remember how I was treated when I bought it. I mean, you long forget about the price, but you never forget.
And that's the message for you guys that are spending a lot of money in these stores that don't appreciate you. Like Jim Jones spending 30 grand and being ignored in the store. Like, that's what matters to me. I used to spend money on all that stuff. And when you walk in a store like that, I watched a video before when they were talking about, like, that's a sales tactic, because, you know, people go in the store and you think, oh, like the sales clerk, they're ignoring you, and you're going to show them by spending a lot of money and giving the commission to another associate instead of them. But the store overall, you spent more money in that store because your ego trying to prove them wrong. And the fact is, you spent a lot of money in the store, and that's really what they wanted you to do in the first place.
Whether you had a good experience or a poor experience with the purchase experience. And you'll have a hard time finding a person that's had a wonderful experience, a delighted experience in purchasing anything that isn't going to come back. And similarly, if the memory is of rudeness, indifference, you know, whatever it may be, they're never going to come back. And as a small business owner, and as you grow, you have to not only be able to project that interest in people's well-being, in delighting them yourself, but you have to do it through other people. And you won't be able to do it through people who themselves do not feel they're being fairly treated, that their views aren't appropriately considered. So you really do have to learn to multiply yourself.
So that means treating your employees the way you want to be treated. So, because if your employees are taking care of your customers and you're treating them bad, it's going to resonate on them, on your customers. And that's where it counts.
Through other people. And I advise the young people to come to Omaha. We have a number of classes. The key is to, certainly in terms of your personal life, the most important decision you'll make is the spouse that most of you will likely have. And it's very important to surround yourself with people that are better than you are. You are going to move in the direction of the people you associate with. So you constantly, I've been enormously lucky in that respect. I mean, I've just had teachers and friends and a spouse that really was a better person than I was. And I had enough sense to learn from these people that life went better if you behaved better yourself. It took a while. So I advise you to seek out, as your partner in business, your partner in life, whatever it may be, look for the people that actually are examples to you rather than somebody that you think you need to straighten out yourself. And simple rules like that, delighting customers, working through other people, associating with people that will cause you to move in a better path than you might otherwise have, they will take you so far in life that it's hard to believe. I mean, they took Rose Blumpkin without being able to speak a word of English, couldn't read or write, and they took her to what is now a $1.5 billion business. And incidentally, there's been no money put in it since the $2,500.
Wow.
That's been the total capital paid into the Nebraska Furniture Mart. And I think if you looked at Enterprise, I don't know their books the same way, but my guess is that very little equity capital has been added to Enterprise over the years. The the business build on itself. So I want to tell you, I admire this group enormously. When I met Dr. Mello's class on September 22nd, 8 years ago, I was thrilled. And I admire people that are doing what you have done. Working hard at your job at the same time, you took on an added, really, lot of hard work to further your skills. 99% graduate. I mean, that's a mind-blowing statistic. And I'm looking at 2,200 people here who I admire. I'm cheering for you, and I can tell you the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Amen. Wow. That was deep. So this next video, so let me give you more precedent on why I'm playing this next video. This next video holds a deep, close space, whatever I'm trying to say, to my heart, because I taught myself how to invest in stocks and everything. I did have a nonprofit show us how to trade stocks, but I didn't really pay attention when I was 12, and it just wasn't too much for me to grasp. But when I got older and got to college, I wanted to learn how to trade stocks. And this video, I watched this video. He has a whole program. It's all free. Like, this is the name of it. I'm gonna move this over so you guys can see it. If you guys, anybody wants to take a look at that, Preston Sykes, I think that's his name. And to make a long story short, yeah, I learned how to invest using his videos. And then I decided to teach my friend how to how to invest as well. And I spent like a week teaching him how to invest, and then he never used it. So now, after that situation and experience, because a lot of people are just talkers and most people don't do anything besides talk, I decided to start sending people this video. So still to this day, if someone's like, "Can you teach me how to trade stocks?" I'll send you this video. And I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty dry, but it starts from the beginning. What is value investing? And this is like Warren Buffett's strategy. And
just say that his paperclip was worth maybe 5 cents.
Like,
so
I'm not gonna bore you with the video. We're gonna go to Warren Buffett's new to invest.
Warren Buffett.
How to invest for beginners. I thought this was an interesting video that I wanted the audience to see. So let's roll this.
Known today as the world's greatest investor. If you had put $1,000 in his investing company when he first initiated it, it would be worth over $17 million today. Now, how did Warren Buffett achieve such a high return? It all came through smart investing and sticking to some key investing principles. I'm going to let Warren Buffett show you them.
We look for three things when we hire people. We look for intelligence, we look for initiative or energy, and we look for integrity. And if they don't have the latter, the first two will kill you. Because if you're going to get somebody without integrity, you want them lazy and dumb. I mean, you don't want them smart and energetic. So the answer is that investors behave in very human ways, which is they get very excited during bull markets, and they look in the rearview mirror and they say, "I made money last year. I'm going to make more money this year, so this time I'll borrow." Or the neighbor says, "I wasn't in last year when that neighbor was dumber than I made a lot of money, so I'm going to go in this year." So they're always looking in the rearview mirror. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see a lot of money having been made in the last few years, they plow in and they just push and push and push on prices. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see no money having been made, they just say, "This is a lousy place to be." So they don't care what's going on in the underlying business. And
which is so interesting, because think about where we're at now. Last year, people were making a ton of money, and everybody invests off of emotions. Last year, people were making a ton of money, and I've seen people that, from my hood, like, "Oh, I'm jumping in GameStop, AMC, all of these things," and I was just like, wow, that's so interesting. You don't know anything about investing, but you're going to put money into something. And then once the market starts to crash, you see people just like everybody's leaving. Like everything is on sale. Everyone is leaving. And then the thing about it that's so interesting to me is because the first person that said that taught me that was Warren Buffett. He's basically said, if you had this tie, like this tie that he's wearing right now, and it went on sale, if you like that tie at $100, would you like that tie at 50? How about 20? Everything is on sale right now, and people are just like, I'm not saying we're at the bottom, but I'm saying everything is on sale. Apple is trading at a 13 PE ratio. Like some of these, everything's on sale. Let's just say that. So don't trade on emotion, just like you said.
It's astounding, but that makes for huge opportunity, just huge opportunity. I've been taught by Ben Graham to buy things on a quantitative basis. Look around for things that are cheap. And
it's cheap right now, everything.
That I was taught that, we'll say in 1949 or 50. It made a big impression on me. So I went around looking for what I call used cigar butts of stocks. And the cigar butt approach to buying stocks is that you walk down the street and you're looking around for cigar butts and you find this on the street, this terrible looking, soggy, ugly looking cigar, one puff left in it. But you pick it up and you get your one puff. It's disgusting, you throw it away, but it's free. I mean, it's cheap. And then you look around for another soggy, one puff cigarette. Well, that's what I did for years. It's a mistake. Although you can make money doing it, but you can't make it with big money. It's so much easier just to buy wonderful businesses. So now I would rather buy a wonderful business at a fair price than a fair business at a wonderful price. I have an old-fashioned belief that I can only should expect to make money in things that I understand. And when I say understand, I don't.
And before he goes into talking about that, I'm just gonna, this is the one thing that I want to say I'm on the fence about this rule, because he missed on Apple because of this. Like, if you don't understand something and it seems like a good company, then you should do your research. And I guess if you don't understand it, I guess not buy. But to me, you miss a lot. Like, no one understands how to build like an electric car, how that would work. But you know that there's some future to it. No one knows how the metaverse will work with Facebook, but you know there might be some future to it. So my approach to this would be, if you're unsure about something, still throw a little bit of money into it. Oops.
I don't mean understand, what the product does or anything like that. I mean understand what the economics of the business are likely to look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I know in general what the economics of, say, Wrigley chewing gum will look like 10 years from now. The internet isn't going to change the way people chew gum. It isn't going to change which gum they chew. If you own the chewing gum market in a big way, and you've got Double Mint and Spearmint and Juicy Fruit, those brands will be there 10 years from now. So I can't pinpoint exactly what the numbers are going to look like on Wrigley, but I'm not going to be way off if I try to look forward on something like that. That evaluating that company is within what I call my circle of competence. I understand what they do, I understand the economics of it, I understand the competitive aspects of the business. The biggest mistakes we've made by far, biggest mistakes I've made by far are mistakes of omission and not commission. I mean, it's the things I knew enough to do, they were within my circle of competence, and I was sucking my thumb. And that is really, those are the ones that hurt. They don't show up anyplace. I probably cost Berkshire at least $5 billion, for example, by sucking my thumb 20 years ago or close to it, when Fannie Mae was having some troubles, and we could have bought the whole company for practically nothing. And I don't worry about that if it's Microsoft, because I don't know it. Microsoft isn't in my circle of competence. And so I don't have any reason to think I'm entitled to make money out of Microsoft or out of cocoa beans or whatever. But I did know enough to understand Fannie Mae, and I blew it. And that never shows up under conventional accounting. But I know the cost of it. I passed it up. And those are the big, big mistakes. And
We'll all have those experiences too.
I've had plenty of them. And unless I tell you about them in the annual report, and I resist the temptation sometimes, unless I tell you about them in the annual report, you're not going to know it because it doesn't show up under conventional accounting. But omission is way bigger than commission. There's big opportunities in life have to be seized. We don't do very many things, but when we get the chance to do something that's right and big, we've got to do it. And even to do it in a small scale is just as big a mistake almost as not doing it at all. I mean, you've really got to grab them when they come, because you're not going to get 500 great opportunities. In terms of our wholly owned businesses, we're not going to sell no matter how much anybody offers us for them. I mean, if somebody offers us 3 times what something is worth at See's Candy, the Buffalo News, Borsheim's, whatever it may be, we're not going to sell it. I may be wrong in having that approach. I know I'm not wrong if I owned 100% of Berkshire, because that's the way I want to live my life. I've got all the money I could possibly need. It just amounts to a change in the newspaper story on my obituary and the amount of money that the foundation has. And to break off relationships with people I like and people that have joined me because they think it's a permanent home, to do that simply because somebody waves a big check at me would be like selling one of my children because somebody waved a big check. So I won't do that. And I want to tell my partners I won't do it so that they're not disappointed in me.
I think that's interesting because I have conversations with people about business. Like, people want to build their business up so that they can sell it. And I just don't see it. Like, if the fundamentals for my business hasn't changed and it's, making me really good money, why would I sell it? Like, if it's something that you enjoy doing, why would you sell it? Like, MySpace could have been Facebook if Tom didn't sell it. And I just think it's really interesting because he did get a nice check, but I feel like that was his baby, and who knows where it would have took him. I'd rather have a business go from 20 million to 2 and be able to live with the fact that, I made a mistake and, it didn't grow into what I thought it was, than to have a business that I have go from 20, could have been 200, but now it's worth 0 because I sold it to someone. And now my product has died, or my service that my business was given has died.
More and more with certain stocks, we've got that approach. Now, if we were chronically short of funds and had all kinds of opportunities coming, we might have a somewhat different approach. But our inclination is not to sell things unless we get really discouraged perhaps with the management, or we think the economic characteristics of the business change in a big way. And that happens. So, but we're not going to sell simply because it looks too high, in all likelihood. You can't make that 100%. So now let's go over here.
Hello, Mr. Buffett. I got 2 short questions. One is, how do you find intrinsic value in a company?
Well, intrinsic value is the number that if you were all-knowing about the future and could predict all the cash that a business would give you between now and Judgment Day, discounted at the proper discount rate, that number is what the intrinsic value of a business is. In other words, the only reason for making an investment and laying out money now is to get more money later on, right? That's what investing is all about. Now, when you look at a stock, when you look at a bond, so it means the United States government bond, it's very easy to tell how much you're going to get back. It says it right on the bond. It says when you get the interest payments, it says when you get the principal. So it's very easy to figure out the value of a bond. It can change tomorrow if interest rates change, but the cash flows are printed on the bond. The cash flows aren't printed on a stock certificate. That's the job of the analyst, is to print out, change that stock certificate, which represents an interest in the business, and change that into a bond and say, this is what I think it's going to pay out in the future. When we buy, some new machine for Shaw to make carpet, that's what we're thinking about, obviously, and you all learn that in business school. But it's the same thing for a big business. If you buy Coca-Cola today, the company is selling for about $110 to $15 billion in the market. The question is, if you had 110 or 15 billion, you wouldn't be listening to me, but I'd be listening to you incidentally. But the question is, would you lay it out today to get what the Coca-Cola company is going to deliver to you over the next 200 or 300 years? The discount rate doesn't make much difference as you get further out. And that is a question of how much cash they're going to give you. It isn't a question of, isn't a question about how many analysts are going to recommend it or what the volume in the stock is or what the chart looks like or anything. It's a question of how much cash it's going to give you. That's the only reason. It's true if you're buying a farm. It's true if you're buying an apartment house. Any financial asset. Oil in the ground, you're laying out cash now to get more cash back later on. And the question is how much are you going to get, when are you going to get it, and how sure are you? And when I calculate intrinsic value of a business, when we buy businesses, and whether we're buying all of a business or a little piece of a business, I always think we're buying the whole business because that's my approach to it. I look at it and say, what will come out of this business and when? And what you really like, of course, is them to be able to use the money they earn and earn higher returns on it as you go along. I mean, Berkshire has never distributed anything to its shareholders, but its ability to distribute goes up as the value of the businesses we own increases. We can compound it internally, but the real question is, Berkshire selling for, we'll say, 105 or so billion now. What can we distribute from that 100? If you're going to buy the whole company for 105 billion now, can we distribute enough cash to you soon enough to make it sensible at present interest rates to lay out that cash now? And that's what it gets down to. And if you can't answer that question, you can't buy the stock. You know, you can gamble in the stock if you want to, or your neighbors can buy it. But if you don't answer that question, and I can't answer that for internet companies, for example. There are a lot of companies, there are all kinds of companies I can't answer it for, but I just stay away from those.
It's funny that these simple principles.
Yeah. So before we go, I had like Preston, who I was talking about. He has this intrinsic value calculator, which I'm gonna see if I can pull it up where I can do it faster. Oh, here we go. So in this video, he came up with this intrinsic value calculator, basically from Rule 4, Lesson 21. So I did go deep into this. And where is it? Oh, it's been so long since I've used it. Did I pass it? I just want I saw it up here. That's so interesting. All right. Oh no, it's showing up on my phone. That's really weird, but it's not showing up on here. Let me try this before we go. Before we roll out of here, let me see if I could pull it up, and because it's definitely when I buy stocks or something that I'm like really interested in. That's weird. When I tried to airdrop it, it didn't work, but here you go. So this is what it looks like. It's in Rule 4. For some reason, it looks like that when you airdrop it, but here you go. And you basically put the current book value there, old book value, the number of years between the book value. If some stocks that you invest in are too new, you probably won't have a ton of years calculated. Cash taken out of the business. Just run through it. It's a great tool that I've used to invest with. But anyway, that's all I got. Appreciate y'all rocking with me once again. Hit the like before you leave. Holla at me.
Low on my fitted, dreams has always been vivid. I'm just trying to go get it. Catch me right around and I'm ignorant. I'm just rolling.